if we are going to talk about schools and textbooks then, which is not what the topic was supposed to be tonight, I would not insist on having creation put into the textbooks. If a teacher wishes to add it to their curriculum, I think they should have the freedom to do that, especially if the school board likes the idea and the students and the families are all for it. But I think every biology textbook in this country ought to have documented errors taken out of the books. If you took everything out of the book that was given as proof of evolution, all of the embryos and the moths and the horses and things like that, then I'd be happy because there wouldn't be anything in the little chapter on evidence for evolution. Now, there's some of the new stuff that is being found that hasn't been disproved yet. I think your ERVs stuff ought to go in the textbook until they find out there's a problem with that. But there's so many problems, if you're talking about textbooks, the textbooks just take out the lies.
And be a teeny tiny section when there is no one at the Health Science Center that can do research that doesn't involve evolution. Like, you don't understand how much we need it as a tool, and it's a functional tool.
It's functional as a model, but if evolution was not true, you
then
could
why
still
does all of our
breed
research work?
RNA viruses.
And that's incredibly childish to say, oh, it's a snake, it's always going to be a snake, it's a rat.
I said you
It's
could still breed RNA viruses if evolution wasn't true.
But the endogenous retrovirus research would absolutely not work at all, and yet it does.
Well, how many of the endogenous retrovirus sequences are there in a human genome?
There are tens and tens of thousands.
Tens and tens of thousands. Well, how many of them do we share in common with chimpanzees?
It depends on how you count. If you're considering all viruses that are complete, if they're considering all...
But what's the range?
As far as we know, complete endogenous retroviruses, I believe there's 12 to 14.
Okay, 12 or 14 of them. And there's 8.5% of our DNA is endogenous retrovirus DNA. Well, what's the chance that out of those 98,000 genes that there'd be 14 orthologs? I mean, I'm not saying that I have proved that that's not evolution, but I am saying it could happen without. Isn't that true?
And we can tell the difference when it happens. That's what we were talking about with the lemurs.
Well, what about the ones that are considered definite common ancestor ones? How many of those are there?
I only know the complete sequences because that's only what...
14 of them?
Yes.
Okay, so there's 14 that line up with the evolution theory out of 98,000.
No, of the complete endogenous retroviruses. These have been in our genome for 30 million years at least.
By the theory,
so
yes.
there's lots of them that are either... They're only the LTRs because LTRs match up and you can pop out that endogenous retrovirus when
they're
still line up
remnants.
perfectly. And then there's the ones I talked about that have mutated over time to have various stops and that sort of thing. So they're non-functional anymore. The ones we're really interested in, the ones we've looked at first, are the very young ones that can still code potentially for an endogenous retrovirus particle that can cause a cancer or disease in people.
Well, I would agree that the 14 that you have go along with the evolution model. But what I'm questioning is, what are the chances that 14 of them would out of 98,000 anyway? Now, like I said, it could be because of evolution. It could, and so there's no other way those 14 could be.
Where a retrovirus inserts into a genome is absolutely random. Some like to insert near maybe more active genes or less active genes, but the actual insertion site...
Gene poor areas, coding poor areas, right?
Not necessarily.
So they are selective to some degree.
Some of them.
Well, I think we're just leaving dangling this thing that what are the chances that out of 98,000, 14 would line up with evolution? It could mean evolution is true, but it could be a third cause.
A trickster god.
No, not the trickster God, a biological cause. Personally, I don't think that God would, that's just my theology or my philosophy on it, I don't think God would go messing around with those things and trick people any more than you think that he would. I think he wouldn't, you think he couldn't, or, but, and I'll give you that, that's fine. But the 14 seem to be critical to the argument, are they not?
Yes.
Yes. Well, what I'm saying is they go along with the theory, much like the red blood cells in the T-Rex and the 4 gene pools for all humans go with the creation theory. I think that the red blood cells are good data against an old age for that fossil. I think that the 4 gene pools are good data for it's compatible with the flood model of human population history. It doesn't prove it, but it's compatible. And from what I can see from the 14 out of 98,000, those 14 are compatible with evolutionary theory. Would you say that
That was,
those
I believe, the
14
third
are
response I
the
had.
judge's hammer comes down, it is done, it is finished, evolution is a fact because of those 14?
Personally, like I said, if every fossil remained buried, and if we somehow figured out the technology to sequence genomes without evolution, which I seriously doubt, but if we had, and if we saw all of these sequences and compared them to retroviruses we see now and saw all of these endogenous retroviral fossils, the common descent would have smacked us. That's an obvious conclusion in the year 2000.
So your answer is yes?
Yes.
Okay, so your
But
answer is the
personally-
14 are enough
Yes.
to be a slam dunk for evolution.
The 14
It's the final.
plus all the other leftover garbage that we've subsequently kind of looked at, but not. That they were independent events.
Well, they had 98,000 chances. Yes. Yeah, of course, the creationist has got to say, well, maybe there's less randomness, even less randomness to the placement of to the insertion of these snippets than is even believed now. It is incomplete knowledge. You must agree that the knowledge is incomplete in ERV research, right?
Yes, and it's only going to be more on the evolution side as we start looking at the things that might not be as important for disease. A lot of research, unfortunately, is not focused so much on just knowing things for knowing things because it causes the disease. You're more likely to get funding for that.